Amplify, Echo, Supplemental, Flurry. Only the Avatar, Master of the Elements, can make the ultimate grid. Me? I'm here to teach you how to become just like that. Hi everyone, I'm Vasky, and this is the Granblue Academy. Welcome back to the Granblue Academy. I'm glad to see you're sticking around for your third lesson. As usual, if you haven't watched the first two yet, I'll be leaving links right below the like button. Get on it. Last episode, we started building up all the knowledge we need to build a grid, but we're not quite done yet. There's still a very important question lingering. How do we go beyond the raw damage? To answer this, we'll expand upon last episode's foundations, revealing the last two components. We'll begin by learning how the damage cap works and how to increase it. Next, we'll learn about how to go even further beyond the damage cap and deal even more damage. We'll wrap it up by applying this knowledge to picking your main and friend summon. Also, I want you to have a look at this. In this episode, we'll be breaking down how I was able to deal that much damage, and what are the factors that made it work. Ready? Well, let's go. Last episode, I introduced the concept of raw damage. What I didn't talk about then, though, was the secondary system that governs it and prevents you from going all in on it. That being damage cap. Think of it this way. If raw damage is how strong you are, damage cap is how strong you're allowed to be. How does damage cap work and how do we increase it? I like to use the analogy of a strongman game. Your raw damage is how strong you are, which I'll represent by the size of this hammer, and damage cap is how high the pole goes. If you're too weak or have too low raw damage, you'll never reach the top. Conversely, if the pole height is really short, it doesn't matter if you're super strong because the game won't let you ever fully use that power. Hitting the top of the pole, or dealing as much damage as the game allows you, is known as hitting the damage cap, or in short terms, capping. There's a few additional constraints here that can also be explained with this analogy. Enemies with higher defense values need more raw damage to hit the same amount, making it harder to cap. We can represent this as the entire pole being tuned tighter. I'll also link a page in the description with defense values for common enemies. Damage cap is not a hard singular number, but rather a system called attenuation, or a soft cap of sorts. Attenuation means the closer you get to the damage cap, the more your raw damage is reduced. We can represent this as specifically the top parts of the pole being tuned tighter. So how do we increase the damage cap then? This can be done in several different ways, including rings, buffs from skills, wonders, artifacts, and of course, weapons in your grid. Depending on the source used, only specific types of damage will have their cap increased. The goal here is to strike a balance between your raw damage and damage cap. The closer together they are, the less is going to waste. You'll never get them fully matched, but it's worth striving for. Okay, but how do we know if we're capping or not? Unfortunately, there's no real way of doing this. There's no visual indicator that a hit is capped. The best way to do this is by doing a little bit of testing. The idea here is if we make a change to our setup that shifts the raw damage one way or another, we can then see if there's a difference. Try changing plus marks or which defense down skills you use. If the values you see remain the same after the changes, you're capping. If you notice a difference, you're probably not. There's a few additional mechanics related to damage cap, so let's have a look at those. First off, Assassin, also known as Sharp Boost to Attack or Assassin's Aim. This is a very powerful buff that gives your characters a big boost in raw damage, but usually an even bigger boost in damage cap. This means you need to make up the difference with additional raw damage in the grid or from buffs. I'll flash some popular examples on screen of recent meta-relevant ones, as of the time of recording. And if you thought the damage cap was cool, get ready for damage cap 2! The special damage cap is an additional damage cap that is enforced by the fight rather than your own setup. This is usually either 6.6 million or 13.1 million, and we usually call it the hard cap. Because the game wasn't confusing enough, you can increase the hard cap, but as of the time of recording, only for charge attacks. Look for weapons and buffs that specifically mention they increase the special CA damage cap. Some additional questions get raised by the introduction of damage cap. Namely, are there baskets for this as well? And is there another mechanic that limits our damage cap? The answer to both of this is kinda. All types of damage cap add up together, as if they were in the same basket. But each source has a limit on how much it can provide. To understand this, we need to introduce the concept of frames. Last episode, we talked about modifiers, or mods. In simple terms, a frame is a source of a mod. Here's an example. Last episode we talked about the Exalta weapons, and we determined they provide damage cap in your grid. But I also showed the Landslide Scepter, and this one provides damage cap SP. What's the difference here? Both of these function the exact same way, increasing your damage cap. The difference is that they have different limits. Both damage cap and damage cap SP from the grid are limited to 20%, but you can have 20% of each, up to a total increase of 40% to your damage cap. From this, we can say we have two frames that provide the same mod. There's other cases of this, such as EX Might SP from voltage weapons, for example. Going above the limit on some frames can provide additional benefits. For example, last episode we saw that crit turns into crit damage. If you go over the limit on damage cap, normal or SP, you get damage cap penetration, which,
Hey, what's up?
Yo, how the f does penetration work?
You want the short version or the long version?
Short version, please.
In technical terms, damage cap penetration reduces the amount damage is attenuated by when it reaches certain thresholds. In the strongman game analogy from earlier, this would sort of mean two different things. The top of the pole is now slightly higher, and the score markers are placed slightly lower, making it easier to reach a higher score. Basically, you can consider damage cap penetration to be kind of like a mini damage cap. Although the math and the specifics are very different, the end result is quite similar. The main thing to note though is that damage cap pen is far less important than damage cap or damage cap special in your grid, since it just doesn't increase your damage as much. But who are we to complain about free damage?
Cut. There is one final caveat here, that being the restricted frame. Say you have Yggdrasil's Bow and a skill damage pendulum on your Dark Opus. You might think these would add up to 100% skill damage cap, but they actually exist in a hidden restricted frame, which can only have one source, so they won't stack. Dark Opus, Ultima, Astral, and Destroyer weapons all share this frame, so you can only have one of each type of damage cap take effect between them. If we add, say, Dagger Peak, this would go up to 70%, as Dagger Peak isn't bound by this restriction. Damage cap is honestly quite complicated, and our explanations here are just scratching the surface and glossing over a lot of details. For most players, this will be more than enough, but if you are a mechanics nerd and you want to learn all there is to know, I will be leaving a link to the wiki page on damage cap in the description. It's time to address the elephant in the room. I still haven't gotten to the wacky clip from the start of the video. How did I even do that? To answer this, we need to unveil our final pillar of grid building, cap break. Cap break is the umbrella term given to the ways you can exceed the damage cap to deal even more damage. There are 4 types of cap break, so let's go through them one at a time and demonstrate how they're contributing to the damage in that clip. Amplify increases your damage by a percentage amount after the damage cap is applied. Chances are you probably already have Amplify in your grid without even knowing it, in the form of a Seraphic or Ultima weapon. Similarly to damage cap up, all Amplify buffs are additive and can apply to different types of damage. Note that Amplify debuffs, such as Fated Chain, are applied separately, a second Amplify basket, if you will. In this case, our damage is amplified by a few sources. Erika's buff, Ruby Asteria, the Transcended Dark Opus first skill, and the Seraphic boosts from the Destroyer weapon and the Moon Summon. We add all of these up. Supplemental, or SUP for short, is a flat increase to your damage, regardless of the original value. Once again, applied after the damage cap. The more hits you deal, the more value you get out of Supplemental. Not to sound like a broken record here, but all sources of Supplemental are additive, and can apply to different types of damage. In our case, we get a lot of Supplemental here. Rhys Velger, Brightkeeper, Destroyer, Belial, Ilsa, the Wamda Summon, and Erika's Keen buff all add up. and this value gets added on every single hit. Bonus damage, better known as Echo, is an additional hit for each of your normal attack hits. The value is based on the original hits value after damage cap and amplifier applied, but before supplemental is. If you dealt 1 million damage and have a 20% Echo, you'll have an additional 200k hit show up. As you'd expect, Echo and supplemental work great together, as the supplemental will apply to each hit. You can see Echo stacking information on character pages on the wiki by scrolling to the bottom. This tells you what stacks with what. I'll leave a link in the description to the bonus damage page if you want further reading. Skills and charge attacks can also receive Echo, but these work a bit differently. For these, the Echo is applied after supplemental. And in the case of skill damage, it's only one hit for each skill trigger, rather than each instance of damage. In our example, there's a lot of Echoes. We get 1 from Ilsa, 2 from Lucio, 2 from Hacelia and her weapon, and 1 from a Valentine's Narmaya I kicked off, and 1 from the Destroyer weapon. Flurry means your normal attacks are split into several hits. For example, if you have a 3-way Flurry, your normal attacks are split into 3 hits. Besides being useful for hit count elements, this doesn't do anything by itself, but when it truly shines is when you combine it with supplemental. If your hits are split in 3, that means your supplemental value is effectively tripled. Multiple instances of Flurry don't stack, so only the highest value is used. Additional Flurry can be gained via a wild Flurry buff, such as the Versusia Summon Call. In our example, Riz Valkyr gives a 4-way Flurry, so our supplemental from before is quadrupled. Okay, that's a lot of info. How do all of these methods of cap up stack together, and how much damage was I actually gaining there? Let's put this nonsense together. Starting with a nominal value of 1 million damage per auto attack, let's mix in our cap breaks. First off, amplify. Let's multiply our damage by it. Next, we apply all of our echoes, leading to all of these hits appearing on top. We have a 4-way flurry, so we split all of them into 4. Next, we apply the massive supplemental damage to every single hit. And this mess that I made of the screen is all the damage our original 1 million turned into. Let's add it all up. Let me be clear here. This was a cherry-picked setup purely for demo purposes. And I didn't even tell you everything that was happening in that video. I just wanted to show off how the various types of cap break add up together to increase your damage exponentially. By understanding how your setup does damage, you can better prioritize supplemental or amplify. Supplemental for lots of hits, amplify for big hits. Usually you'll want some of each in some way. But is there a way to know what types of cap break we want? I'm afraid there isn't. And to bring back an old favorite, the only way to know is to try it and see. Now that we know how these effects interact with our characters and in the grid, there are still some very important questions left lingering. Namely, how do we know what main and friend summons to use? And when is Duo Magna not correct? Knowing what summons to use is an exercise in knowing what types of support a setup wants, and whether we're willing to give up our boosting summons for it. The value our boosting summons provide is dependent on what boostable skills we have in the grid. Back in episode 1, we talked about Celeste Saber Aether. Using Dual Celeste means each of these gives a load of skill cap up and skill supplemental. We call this a dual-sided grid, as there is a boost on both sides, main and friend. Should we swap out one of the Celestes for a non-boosting summon, our grid would change to single-sided, and the potency of these mods would decrease. So there's always a trade-off to be considered. Why would we do this? Because in some situations the summon we'd swap in provides even stronger mods, or a unique effect we want instead. Before we look at the various summon choices, there is one important thing I want to talk about. I like to call this the 280% rule. As you go further into the game, you'll notice more and more weapon skills take effect only when your boost is 280% or higher. If you're dual-sided, this is trivial, but a single-sided setup needs more legwork to get there. You can see how much boost of each type you currently have from the info panel in your grid. You can get additional boost from several sources, such as Exalta weapons, 6 Dragon summons, or Primarch and Saint characters in your team. My point here being, that once you start incorporating these powerful weapons into your grid, you will quickly realize that hitting 280% is paramount. If you use a non-boosting summon, you're going to have to incorporate additional sources of boost into your setup in order to play around the 280% rule. And depending on what you're doing, as we saw in the previous episode, this may be difficult. So this raises the question, what even are these non-boosting summons that we want to go through all of these hoops for? Well, there's a lot of them, and you know what? I think this calls for a lightning round.
Lucifer
Gives HP, heals, and removes the debuff after an enemy charge attack. The HP main aura is not as strong as it looks. Use if you need a debuff clear.
Bahamut
Lowers initial summon cooldown by 3 turns. Use if you need to call an off-element summon.
Kaguya
Increases drop rate for gold chests. You can also use Nobio if you don't have her. Has no offensive mods besides TA. Used for trivial fights such as Angel Halo.
Huanglong
Gives charge bar on battle start. Used for charge attack based bursts.
Kirin
Resets skill cooldowns when called. Used for long bursts where you have to reuse your skills.
Shiva
Gives Team-wide assassin on call. Used for some low button bursts.
Beelzebub
Increases your MC's TA and damage cap. Inflicts defense down and supplemental damage when called. Use it to fix MC's TA or for 1-turn bursts.
Yatima
Calls 2 equipped summons at random. Will not call 1-use summons. Used for specific bursts that need 2 summons in 1 action.
000
Gives 10% amplify. Gives full charge bar and CA reactivation to MC on call. The sub bar is the same but requires some ramp up. Used for burst when you want your MC to CA twice.
Orologia
Gives double strike to MC and supplemental damage to the team. Note, only has dark attack. Use it for dark burst or MC specific burst with double strike.
Versusia
Gives amplify and dispels if there were 5 combined TAs and CAs the previous turn. Gives this and +1 flurry on call. Used for burst and 1 flurry or longer fights if you can fulfill the condition. Oh cool, the lights are back on. So, one more thing. In the previous episode, I mentioned the concept of EX grids. These are setups where you take neither main nor friend boosting summon. So we actually call them unboosted. What are they, and what do we use them for? You can consider an unboosted setup if you want something very specific from both the main and friend summons. Because of the 280% rule, these have fallen out of fashion. The main culprit as of recording is a Providence main with Kirin friend, usually with Yatima sub-summon, so you can call both. This is sometimes taken for specific long burst rotations. Some low-end setups may also want 2 Huangrongs to gain a lot of charge bar immediately, but this is becoming rarer by the day. Now this may be non-intuitive, but unboosted grids tend to stack up to 5, sometimes even 6 of the Magna Exalters, as they have extremely efficient mod mixing and provide their own boost to make up for the lack of it from the summons. Generally, I believe when you want to make a team, you should default to dual side. If you feel one of your summons gives you access to something even stronger, you want to give that a try and see if single side is better. Unboosted is usually only reserved for very specific setups, so keep that as your lowest priority. And with that, the second part of grid building is in the bag. Thank you all for attending the lecture. I hope you liked it. There will hopefully be one more episode on the Granblue Academy, so if you have any ideas on things you want me to cover in the series, please do let me know. I do read all the comments. Oh, as for homework, I do have some for you today. Once again, I want you to go on advanced grids and find a setup you'll like. I want you to check each weapon in the grid and determine what it provides to the team. With that information, I want you to try and reason why these effects are valuable to the team and the setup in question. Ask yourself questions such as, why is this team taking this weapon? And is there anything else that could work or be even better here? Like last time, extra credit if you also leave it in the comments. And with that, I am done for today. My gold brick stash is in absolute shambles, so I have to go farm some more. I'll leave you guys for now. Hope you liked the lecture, and as always, have fun.